What's up everybody, Jack here from FChrome, and I've flown a lot of tiny whoops recently on the channel, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of compare and contrast these different machines. Now this video is only going to compare 65mm quads, so if it's 75 or larger, it didn't make the cut for this video. I feel like that helps us compare apples to apples a little bit better because the 75 is going to fly a lot different than a 65. I'm going to talk about the two Air65s from BetaFPV, the two different versions of the Mobula6 2024. I did just get this NewBeeDrone hummingbird, and also to round it out, I've got the old Mobula6 HDZero, the first one with HDZero. So there are two HDZero quads, 4 analog quads, and 6 in total that I'm going to run through. And our goal is to figure out which is the best one for you. And I think that answer differs on who you are. Now, I flew these things, Chris flew these things, and my son flew these things. We're all three different pilots, so I'll kind of talk about it from those three different perspectives. Now, I excluded anything that was kind of older, like these BetaFPV quads. They're fine. As technology evolves, sure, these are options. The only older quad on the list is that HDZero one, but that's for a good reason. Now I put together this chart that'll kind of help you sort some of the different specs. We're looking at the different weight, we're looking at the motors, the KV, the camera, the transmission system, the VTX power, the battery or the battery lead, and of course the price. Price is super important when you're kind of getting into this stuff as well because it kind of varies. Now all of these drones were ELRS compatible when I flew them all, and Chris flew them all with a Boxer version radio, so that's pretty consistent. Now, if you're a pilot that doesn't fly tiny whoops, I think Chris is actually a pretty good comp. He flies a lot of the camera drones. We're talking the Mavics and the Phantoms and the Autel stuff. That is his bread and butter. Now, he has flown whoops before, but it's been a while for him. So I'm going to kind of let him walk through what his thoughts were on each one of these drones. All right, thoughts on the NewBeeDrone?
So, I am ashamed to say I haven't flown FPV in a long time. It feels like a year, and this thing is super easy to fly. Shot some tight gaps here. Recovers really nicely too. So this drone's been a lot of fun to fly.
All right, Chris, thoughts on the Mobula6 2024?
Flies really well, very similar to the last one. But that being said, the camera has a lot of sharpening, which actually makes things easier to fly, right? You just want things to stand out. But yeah, flies, as far as I can tell, pretty much the same. As you pointed out, I'm looking kind of dialed in. I don't know if we give the drone any credit for that, or me, I don't know. But yeah, it's fun to fly.
All right, Chris, this is the BetaFPV Freestyle Edition. Thoughts?
Nice camera, really clean signal, flies great. Again, I just flew through these chairs just now for like the third time. Feel like it makes it really easy, and yeah, I'm just feeling pretty good dialed in here today.
All right, Chris, thoughts on the BetaFPV Racing Edition?
So it's definitely very punchy, makes it a little difficult with the very tight gaps, just like getting a fine precision on your power or your throttle. But once you get used to it, it's great. I mean, obviously for indoors, this thing is basically way faster than it needs to be. But still a lot of fun to fly in here, and I guess a little bit easier to recover. But yeah, I'm hitting the floor a lot more than I was with the other ones, just meaning I'm cutting, you know, just again getting used to the throttle, I guess.
All right, so Chris, this is the original Mobula6 with HDZero. Thoughts?
The camera's great. You know, definitely feel the need to give it more throttle. It is the heavier drone, so that took some getting used to. Recovery might be a little, yeah, I mean, it definitely just responds a little bit slower when you need to get over something with that extra weight. So overall, would I trade the weight for the camera? I'm not sure yet, personally. It is pretty heavy compared to the others. So, but I just flew a really tight gap, which definitely would have been harder. And actually, you know, that a little less punchy sometimes actually makes it a little easier to control as well. So I don't know, it's definitely a great picture.
All right, this is the Mobula6 ECO, the HDZero version from 2024. What are your thoughts?
So definitely a little bit lighter, flies more like the others, doesn't have the heaviness of the original. So it flies great. The main thing I noticed is just the camera, you know, isn't quite as crisp and is got some kind of crazy red saturation thing going on. Any light in your basement that is any amount of yellow or orange to it is glowing bright orange. You're glowing bright orange. You look like an Oompa Loompa. So, but other than that, I mean, I guess who really cares? You're here to fly and have fun. If you were recording with this, I think it would be very distracting to watch everything look so red. But, you know, flies pretty similar, a little bit quicker than the last one.
Would you take that over analog?
I take it over analog. Yeah, I mean, the camera quality is still definitely better. You know, no hair, no fuzz. But, yeah, it's just red.
Hey, thanks, Chris. That was kind of fun to kind of let him run through each one of those drones that he hadn't flown before, just kind of get his thoughts on them as he was flying them. Now I'm going to talk about my son's experience with the drones. He was a little bit less experienced. I think maybe I didn't give Chris enough credit. He's obviously flown before, as has my son, but he really kind of struggled inside. And then I want to talk about my experience with these drones and what I would recommend. I do fly them both inside and outside. I have done whoop racing before, but I also like to fly a little bit of freestyle, so I'll kind of throw that in the mix as well. Now my son has less experience flying whoops. He does like to fly freestyle drones outside, but flying whoops indoors was a challenge for him. And actually this guy, the HDZero, the original Mobula6 with HDZero, was the easiest for him to fly. And actually Chris kind of talked about that a little as well. The camera on this is the best. It's HDZero, and it's heavy, right? And that may seem counterintuitive, but the heavy drone kind of, it's not as twitchy, it's not as athletic, it's not as aggressive, making it a lot easier for both of them to fly. But it's also $200. Twice as expensive as some of these other drones, or actually even more than twice as expensive as some of the other drones on the list. Now to compare that with the new Mobula6 ECO, also has HDZero. The picture isn't quite as nice, but this drone is a lot lighter and a little bit faster. So if you have to have HDZero, it's hard to argue against the $150 ECO version. But if you want a little bit slower and a better picture, that's where the old guy comes in handy. Now on to the analog quads. These two, this is the NewBeeDrone and this is the BetaFPV Freestyle. These two are probably the easiest to control, especially if you're flying indoors. And this one is $89 and the BetaFPV is $95. Now, the biggest difference I think is, well, this one I did upgrade the frame, so it's a little bit lighter. So it's a little bit slower and heavier and sturdier at its original $89 price point. Now this one, the Freestyle, is really good. If you're not a pro, it's just a little bit easier to handle than the racing counterpart. And if you're going to be flying these inside and outside, then I would probably recommend either the Air65, the Racing Edition, or the Mobula, right? The Mobula6 2024. But in terms of, you know, they're super comparable. I think the Air is a little bit quicker, a little bit more nimble, flies a little bit better, and you know what? It's cheaper too. But the Mobula 8 at about $110 and this one at $95. I think this is the clear winner if you want to fly this inside and out, or if you are into racing. Just the dollar savings and the slightly better tune. I'm going to go with the Racing Edition here if you want to fly outside. Now Chris and Jackson had the hardest time with this one indoors just because it is so twitchy, and that's where I would probably recommend going with the Freestyle version, the lower KD motors and the less aggressive props, make it just a little bit easier to control indoors. Now if I had to pick one of these and only one of them, I would pick this, the Mobula6 ECO at $150. I love the HDZero camera, and it can do a little bit more than the older HD version. The NewBeeDrone one is the least expensive, but I would rather spend the extra $5 and go with one of these BetaFPV ones because of that 400 milliwatt VTX. I think that is just a little bit better. I do love the Mobula, but it's just too much money, right? At this point, it's just a little bit too expensive when those other options are just as good, if not better, at a lower price point. At the end of the day, these are all fun options and it's hard to go wrong. So take a look at the chart, see if there's any specs on there that's what you're looking for, that's what you want or you want to avoid. Now looking at these things, I'm gonna have to do some repairs. That comes with flying tiny whoops, and you're definitely gonna wanna make sure you pick up some E6000 or some welder glue. It's not super expensive. You can get it on Amazon. I'll drop a link down below, but just the flexible nature of this glue helps you repair these ducts, and it just that tiny bit of flexibility keeps it from being super rigid and breaking like super glue does. I also would recommend taking this, and I put a little dab of glue over the UFL connectors on every single one of these. That just kind of helps that from popping off, because if it does pop off, it's going to it could ruin your VTX. If you're looking for one of these drones, we've got links down below. They are affiliate links, but they help support this channel. And if you haven't subscribed already, we'd love to have you back. Also, edit a thing. This is gonna be pretty fun. If you wanna see how this 65 with larger props works out, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Good luck everyone and happy flying.